would argue about the possibilities for social democracy in Latin America today and the kinds of coalitions that you're talking about. I do think there are possibilities. And at least in the abstract sense of some sort of social democratic model that would be clearly committed to liberal representative democracy, and also that would be reformist and redistributive in terms of moving towards a more egalitarian model of economic development. I think that is a possibility for Latin America. And so broadly conceived, I would argue that that is a type of social democracy, but I think it would likely be a different kind of social democracy from what we've seen historically in Europe. And that shouldn't surprise us. Europe itself is finding it difficult to continue with the traditional kinds of social democratic models. And so you see Europe struggling to adapt social democracy to an era of globalization, especially a globalization of financial markets. But I would argue that what you're likely to see in Latin America, what the opportunities would be for progressive alternatives, I think you would see more heterogeneous kinds of coalitions. In other words, a social democracy that is less dependent on labor unions and the organized working class as a core constituency. It's probably going to be a social democracy where the levels of the transfer of income through taxation and transfer policies, it's hard to imagine Latin America getting to the levels of 50 or 60% of taxation that you see in Europe, or 70% of labor unionization as sort of the classic social democratic kinds of models. But I think what you also have in Latin America, although neoliberalism fragments the working class and makes it difficult to have a strong organized labor core for a social democratic movement, neoliberalism also tends to create grievances for a lot of other different kinds of social actors, whether it's pensioners, whether it's students, people working in the healthcare field. And so you can see mobilization and political activity around those grievances for a much more heterogeneous kind of coalition. And I think there are opportunities to try to pull that together, certainly in the electoral arena. I think the left has demonstrated that they can win elections in Latin America. We've had over 30 presidents from the left elected in Latin America since the late 1990s. So it's clearly possible to win elections. I think we've discovered it's somewhat more difficult to actually govern on the left and to implement and sustain the kinds of redistributive reforms. So I would argue that is really the key challenge. It's not so much getting elected for a progressive coalition, but it's bringing about the kinds of institutional reforms, maintaining the kinds of interactive relationships between state reformers and civil society and social movements, but trying to build linkages then between civil society and political parties so that you can advance a reformist agenda. And I think that's where we've found it to be difficult to really sustain that kind of momentum within Latin America. But I don't want to be overly pessimistic. I do think there are opportunities for that kind of agenda within Latin America.